biologically and anthropologically, humans were never meant to exercise the way we currently do. We never had to. Like no one in hunter-gatherer societies would recognize someone just running for the health benefits. They would think, why are you doing that? It's dumb.
On Connecting the Dots, we aim to redefine what the term healthy means by learning from experts, identifying different areas of our life that impact our well-being, and becoming our greatest health advocates.
We believe that by making small lifestyle changes, people can not only manage, but also prevent a wide range of chronic illnesses we are taught to believe are normal in our society today.
My name's Kathlyn Carney. I'm a nutritionist, foodie, author, and creator and co-host of this raw, real, and sometimes ridiculous show.
And I'm Melissa Chamis, the other half of Connecting the Dots. I'm also a certified yoga instructor, Reiki 1 practitioner, and a hustler just trying to survive in corporate America.
We are close friends who bonded over our messy healing journeys and are eager to share our experiences with you.
So come join this journey with us as we all learn to connect the dots between the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being human.
We now know that 80% of the reason why people go to the doctor's office is because of stress. It's a stress-induced illness.
So if we want to be working on healing the body, the gut and the brain have to be worked on together.
People get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Never accept that, oh, I'm just always going to be this way, because there's always something you can do about it.
So make one lifestyle choice after another and do it with support.
The future of health looks like prevention.
It's going to be more common for everybody to have their own customized health plan.
Our health is no different than the health of the planet.
It's never too late to feel great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. I am so excited for today's episode because we are talking about fitness. Specifically, we have on the show Dr. D, who is a personal trainer. And I really wanted to talk to him because, as we know, there are so many components to wellness. There's your nutrition, there's physical activity, sleep, stress, finding your purpose or your why in life. There's so many different things that go into wellness and feeling good. And I wanted to have an expert on the show that could really talk to us about that physical fitness piece and make sure that we learned what it really looks like to go to the gym. Because for me, after I graduated high school and started college and was no longer playing organized sports, I found it so hard and so intimidating to go to the gym. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know it was safe. I didn't know how many reps I should do. Like, I was just so lost. And that was such a big barrier for me. And it truly kept me out of the gym for so long. And I just wanted to make sure that as we engage in connecting the dots and really try and give you the most holistic and well-rounded view of health, we had an expert on here to talk more about that physical fitness piece and try and break down that barrier for anyone else who feels so overwhelmed by the topic of physical activity.
Yeah. And then for me, physical fitness and activity is a big part of my wellness journey, especially starting off as a yoga instructor. Like going to the gym was like second nature to me. And over COVID, I became a morning workout person, which I talk about in this episode. But I've been learning this year that working out is not, and eating healthy is not only the only aspect to health that's important. And that's something that Dr. D gave us. So what sets him apart is that Dr. D has a Ph.D. in sports education leadership with an emphasis in behavior modification from UNLV. And he's been in the fitness and wellness business for 20 years. He's also the co-owner of Epic Leisure Management LLC, the owner of Parker Personal Training LLC, and the co-founder of a podcast host and guest connector platform, F.EM. He is a featured writer and presenter for national fitness organizations and is also the host and creator of Dr. D's Social Network, a podcast devoted to genuine, open, and honest conversations with people from all over the world. and Kath and I were actually guests on his podcast. So I would highly recommend going to listen to that as well. But what just fascinated us about Dr. D and this conversation was that he wasn't your typical personal trainer. Because he has his experience with behavior modification as well. He focuses on the benefits of combining talk therapy with his training. So really getting down to the intention of, why are you really going to the gym? What are you hoping to get out of this? Most of them are superficial reasons, which I think we can all agree. We want to look better. We want to feel good, but it's like, why do we want to look better? Are we doing it for other people, or is there something internal that we want to kind of feel from? And I think sometimes with the gym, it can also be a coping mechanism or an avoidance strategy from dealing with your problems. And what he tries to focus on is helping people get down to the root of those causes. So while you're also working out, while you're lifting weights, while you're running, etc. And I think that was just so fascinating.
Yeah, he really does take that full mind, body, spirit approach. And you're just going to love everything that you hear from this man. Like, from him explaining how he relates to his clients, how he's been able to have clients for decades, literally clients that have been working with him for years because he's built such good relationships with them, and how he just cares so much about making other people feel valued and heard. And he's not a therapist, so working out with him isn't like going to therapy, but he just makes you feel valued and heard, and makes you reflect on your why and your goals and your motivation, like Melissa said. And that is just so incredible and so inspiring, and something that a lot of us don't have space for, and we don't have time for. It's hard enough to get to the gym, let alone to reflect and think about our why or our motivations or process some of our emotions. And so the fact that he acknowledges this and is like, it is really amazing that people have cut out 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half of their life to dedicate to their health and their wellness. How can I make that a better experience for them? And yeah, I mean, we love him. We really loved being a guest on his show. And as a nutritionist and somebody in the wellness field, I just loved how he didn't just talk about fitness in this episode, but he talked about some of those other pillars of wellness that I mentioned a moment ago, like sleep, like stress management, like feeling that you are important and loved, and that you are told by somebody that you're doing a good job. And in my practice, I really focus on doing the same thing for my clients, while I focus on their diet primarily, and helping them make sure that they're getting all the nutrients that they need. There are so many factors that play into that, from movement to sleep to stress. And so this resource guide is a combination of my own research and what I use with clients, what Dr. D mentioned in the episode, what Melissa learned as a yoga teacher. And so we're really excited to offer you the resource guide for this episode, because it's not just fitness. It's not just one thing. It's really taking that holistic view and helping you feel your best.
Yeah, so I'm excited for you guys to listen to this episode. And like Kath said, Dr. D is just like such a good soul and so interesting to talk to. And there's some really good, interesting facts he talks about in the episode too that you mostly won't really think about. And one thing I do want to mention is he mentioned zip code health, which is something that I am looking into more now, because I've been learning that maybe living in New York City is not the best for my health. And when this episode comes out, I will have moved to Miami. But I think it really is important to, like Kath was saying, look at all aspects of health, because you might have the basic ones down, but then there's the environmental triggers, there's the emotional triggers, there's, are you sleeping enough, which still I'm trying to get under wraps. So don't worry, guys, it's not all perfection here either. So yeah, enjoy the episode.
Thank you so much, Dr. D, for being on Connecting the Dots. We absolutely loved being on your podcast and are excited to continue this collaboration. Before we get started, would love to ask you our icebreaker question, which is, what is something that you're reading, watching, or listening to?
Man, there's a lot. There's a lot to answer there. Let's see what I'm watching. Recently, I've been watching Keep Breathing on Netflix, which has been good. I really enjoyed that about a lady who crash lands, I think, in the Alaskan wilderness and is trying to survive. But it like details like her life before that time and kind of explains like her mentality, the whole thing. That was good. And then just finished watching Woodstock 99 on Netflix. That was incredible. That was fantastic. So cool. I mean, I remember that back in 99. I definitely remember that time, but I remember how crazy, I don't remember it being that crazy, like how poorly done it was and all that stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And then I'm reading My 31st Year by Emily Wolf, who was a guest on my podcast. And it's about, it's a character she created, and it's about abortion and faith and the band U2. It's this whole, and it's very witty. It's extremely witty. It's like one of the more funny, wittier ways to write a book, I thought is really cool. So that's currently what's happening.
Nice. We got to check it out. I
Check 'em
definitely,
out.
the Woodstock video.
It's so good.
That's been on my list for a while. So
you'll blow through it.
Okay, cool. Well, all right. So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your health journey and how that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So I think like a lot of people are like in fitness, especially, kind of started out playing sports and things like that. For me, I was a track and field athlete in high school, and I ended up being pretty good at it. So I got a scholarship to run track and field at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So I did that, used all of my years of eligibility. And I always knew I wanted to be in fitness. It was something that I always enjoyed, exercise. But as I was going through my educational journey, I realized that this was just a good platform to meet other people and create meaningful relationships. So I essentially used getting into the business to create long-term relationships with people. So I figured I would be doing something that was very meaningful to both myself and to my clients, and that we would be discussing things with each other that would be very in-depth and very genuine and meaningful. And I figured I could do this for a long time. I'm pretty sure it feels very natural to me. And I always tell people like training people is like a language for me. It's just it feels fluent for me. It always has felt like that for me. So I, started being a trainer in 2001. So it's been a long time, and I've been training pretty regularly the entire time. I have a very strong clientele of people. My longest running person is 15 years. The majority of them are in the 9-10 year range at this point. And I really enjoy just the relationship building aspect to it. The exercise, while obviously is kind of a point of entry, is not the main factor I've learned in the majority of it. Which is one reason why I ended up getting my doctorate at UNLV in sports education leadership, because I wanted to have a good understanding of how to interact with people in a more personal level and how I can help be a part of their behavior change process, which is primarily social, emotional, intellectually based more than the physical aspects of things. So I've been doing that. Then I've also been a fitness executive for many years and own my own fitness businesses. But I feel like I've always just been a trainer. Honestly, I've always come back to that. It's always been my thing. It's what I do the most. And I enjoy just the personal relationships with people.
It's incredible. And Judging from all of the projects that you have going on, I love that that's still your baby. And so would love to, talk a little bit more about that. So we know, like, you've always been interested in fitness, kind of how you became a personal trainer, but then how did you start to develop your sessions and the services that you were going to offer to clients, and what does that look like now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely progressed, but one of the biggest things is that when people work with someone, well, a lot of people will say, well, like, I don't want it to be like a boot camp type of thing, or you're yelling at me or saying all these things, or this kind of fake motivational chatting. It's like, it happens with people, I'm telling you. Or what, people would see on TV, The Biggest Loser and all this stuff, which is not reality. It is not how people generally work with people in my profession. So again, I approached it from more of a psychosocial base, like, okay, I have the technical knowledge, the point of entry, understanding origin insertion, the biomechanics, the exercise physiology. I mean, that part, it was interesting to me, but I knew it wasn't what kept people and, keep coming back. So my philosophy in training has always been, how do I make it interesting for people, keep them moving regularly, but also having a conversation? So it's almost like talk therapy and training at the same time. And so, for instance, like each week I'll kind of develop a concept around what we're doing for each client, and then I'll also develop some line of questioning along with it. So like this week, I would ask all my clients and ask them, like, what is your philosophy about beauty? And talking about beauty, and what is the consciousness of beauty, and what is objective attraction, and while we're going through our exercise progressions. So it's funny. So it also makes them forget they're exercising at the same time. So it's kind of I don't want to say a trick, but it's a strategy to get to create kind of this time dilations, because people often look at their watch. They're like, how much time is left? Oh my goodness, how much longer is this? Try to like alleviate that through changing their concept of time by talking about something more in depth with that. So I would say that's kind of the larger aspect of how I work with people.
I think that's amazing that you combine both the physical and the emotional aspect. So is there certain, like, do you specialize in weight training, cardio, or is it more of like a holistic view for whatever the client needs?
I just meet them wherever they're at in their journey. Some people need a lot more rehab-based work. Some people are more athletic initially, so we can start at a different place. It really just depends. And I think that's the mistake of a lot of training, is to kind of cookie cut it and go, I want to make these people tired. I want to just push them. And the majority of people actually don't want that. They're not trying to become the best athlete in the world or the fittest person. The majority of people just want to have some time. Honestly, a lot of people just want to have time to themselves with another adult, especially parents. They never have time with another adult to talk about adult things. And so they always say, well, this is my time to be able to talk to another person and exercise. And that's where I think the talking comes in, asking kind of these existential questions. It pushes people to inform their mental and psychosocial health while they're exercising. So it just creates more value for the service. So it's never like, oh, weight loss. If somebody asks me about weight loss, I'm like, that's not the business I'm in. No trainers in that business, actually. But the clients believe that that's what the trainer's for. So we educate them like, no, that's not what we do. So it's a lot of re-education too,
Yeah, we know from being on your show that you're very good at asking existential questions.
Thank you.
So I have no doubt that you provide your clients with that adult time and some really thought-provoking conversation. Aside from, these amazing aspects that you're offering your clients, like for just general listeners who maybe don't know a ton about personal training or have never worked with a personal trainer, like what would you say some of the main benefits are?
I'm gonna say probably the biggest benefit is having accountability. Um, the majority of humans struggle with consistency with exercise, health, and wellness. And that consistency part is a common thread I've seen throughout my entire career. So often just the accountability aspect is the big benefit, that something's on your schedule, and also that you feel connected to someone. That it's one thing to tell yourself, I'll just won't do it today. But it's another thing to say that to another person and tell them, I'm going to not do this today to them. It hurts more when there's someone else involved. And it's kind of the weird dichotomy of like, you're willing to people sometimes are more willing to let themselves down, but they don't want to let other people down for that. So the accountability factor is important. The other thing I think is just taking away the thought of what do I do when I work out. Is what am I going to, a lot of people go and I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? So they kind of like wander aimlessly when they work out, or they default to what they're used to doing for that. Whether that's good or not, they just default to it. So having someone else take the wheel and say, hey, this is the progression we're going to do. This makes sense in terms of like overload, specificity, where you're at in your life, all the different factors, how well did you sleep, your nutrition, the whole thing. That takes a burden off of people's minds. It's often why people don't exercise. They're like, well, I just don't know what to do. I just have no clue where to start. I'm not sure how to actually improve. So I actually think those two things are probably some of the bigger things. And then again, as I mentioned, I think the social emotional relationship is one thing that I don't think a lot of people think they're going to get out of it. They think it's just a transactional relationship. But most people, when they enter into it, realize, oh, this is actually like a significant other relationship. This is like you're actually growing with someone and building something together. And I think that surprises people. It was a huge benefit to it.
Yeah, no, I remember even when I like started teaching yoga, like the community aspect was one of those things that like I never thought I would gain, but it was the most important thing. And I feel like people with certain like health practitioners and stuff, once you start building that relationship and they start knowing you and everything you've been through, it kind of, you start to get closer and feel comfortable.
Right.
So you kind of touched on it as you were talking about the benefits before, but what do you think are like the most important things for people to consider when they're starting to work out for the first time, even if it's not with a personal trainer, but by themselves?
I think like just the readiness factor. There's stages of readiness for people, but are they exercising for themselves or for someone else? For some external reason? What are their barriers of entry? Barriers could be other people, could be jobs, could be other, variables in their life, work schedule, whatever it may be. And then also just you're not going to get it all in one day or a month type of thing. Like I'm just very honest with people. Like this is like a many, many, many years relationship. It's just going to take time. And you have to like accept that it's a very slow process, and also in starting that it's okay that you don't want to do it. It's actually okay. Like, I think we need to give people permission to feel that way, because biologically and anthropologically, humans were never meant to exercise the way we currently do. We never had to. We did it for survival, for reproduction, energy conservation, for hunting, gathering, all those things. It was just part of like living. So now, since we've taken away of a lot of the activity out of living, we have forced ourselves to have more formalized structure based for exercise. Like no one in hunter-gatherer societies would recognize someone just running for the health benefits. They would think, why are you doing that? It's dumb. like it's just an absurd reality for current hunter-gatherer societies and past. It's like that, it makes no sense. Or if they went to a gym, like, why are you doing that? Like, don't you pick up things naturally? Like carry things around for survival. So I think given it's okay biologically, you are trying to override a mechanism that is telling you not to do this. Like, we don't need this. We should be doing this way. So it's okay that you don't want to do it. But the point is that if you're not in a position where it's more manual for you and you're doing those things, you have to have another option for doing it. So I think those pieces are really important, especially the permission part. It's like, because we always tell people like they're lazy or something. They're not lazy. I think most people aren't lazy. They're just trying to overcome their biology with it. I mean, some people maybe, but like most people, I think they're just, it feels innately not natural how it's currently done. And that, I think it's okay to feel that.
I've never heard someone explain it like that, but I love it. And it makes me feel a little bit better because I definitely was one of those people who just was like, I don't want to do this after it wasn't part of my routine, like taking a gym class or playing sports. Like when it was just a part of my day in my life, I was excited and whatever. But then when that wasn't, and I had to structure it in my adult life, I was like, I don't want to do this. Is there, though, in your experience, an optimal amount people should be engaging in physical activity in our, modern society?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's recommendations out there for the amount, it could be anywhere from, depending on the intensity of exercise, from 75 minutes a week for strenuous activity up to like 450 plus minutes a week for a kind of lower intensity exercise. I mean, I think they're just honestly the parameters to me don't make much sense. I think it's pretty case by case basis. I think in general, like you have to be able to listen to your body, understand, you have to provide a stimulus, you have to have rest in between the stimulus and to see how you respond to it. But consistency is the main thing. And, there's a point of diminishing returns, which happens to people who become very much into exercise, where they just exercise all the time. And then they're like, well, why is nothing changing? They're like, well, you can do anything too much. You can eat too many oranges. I mean, you really could. Like, so people do it all the time. So I think that a good recommendation is if it's kind of lower intensity exercise, you can do that most days because you're not overstressing your body to the point where like you can't get some benefit from it on a regular basis. If it's intense, you're going to need more time for recovery for that. So I think kind of a general parameter, but that we're at the point in our country where like the new recommendations are really just like do something. Literally, that's basically what the guidelines are. That's pathetic. Like, like it used to be a very specific guideline, and now it's literally like just do something. Like that's how bad it's gotten. And I'm actually not sure that's going to change in the future. It doesn't look like it's not trending in the right direction. So let's do something apparently.
Yeah, and I feel like with COVID over the past few years, everyone's now been working from home. Some people are going back hybrid, but we're getting used to that sedentary lifestyle. And even myself, like I noticed the more I sit all day, I'm like, even just going for the walk, I'm like, my body's deteriorating just sitting here. I need to start doing more strength training or adding that into my lifestyle because it's clearly not happening when I'm not walking outside to work or something. So I'm curious, you did mention the recovery piece. Can you talk about some of the things that are important for recovery, especially if you're doing some of those more intense types of workouts?
Yeah. I think recovery, sleep is the best recovery, which is, as you may know, sleep is at an all-time horrific aspect of our society, right? Sleep is horrible for Americans, especially right now, which is why there's, I think now such a huge emphasis now to start talking about it. So when people say, what's the best recovery? I'm like, a good night's sleep is your best recovery, not all these gadgets and stuff like that. I mean, there can be some benefit to different vibration technology and things of that nature, but generally just getting quality sleep, uninterrupted sleep, and having good techniques and strategies for good sleep is going to be your best way to have great recovery. It just is. It's the best sleep. It's the best performance enhancing drug you'll ever take, sleeping, for that. And what's crazy to me is that up until maybe the last 10, 20 years, we didn't really know much about sleep at all. And often it was demonized by many parts of our society as being a waste of time, and CEOs of companies bragging about, I sleep very little, I'll sleep when I'm dead. This whole line of thinking, which is so counterproductive and so counterintuitive. All living creatures sleep. All creatures sleep. It's an incredibly important aspect to recovery. And there are so many great people out there in the sleep science field that are doing amazing work in this. Probably the most well-known person is Matthew Walker, who the UK. His book is Why We Sleep. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I'm not a huge reader, but I blew through that book so quickly, and I sent it to a bunch of people that I knew who did not sleep well, and it like changed their life. They were like, wow, like sleep is really this important. I'm like, for everything. Like sometimes when people in like really bad moods regularly, I'm like, do you sleep well? Like, no. I'm like, that could be a huge contributing factor why you're in a bad mood all the time. And they never think about it that way. They think it's something else. I'm like, yeah, probably you're just sleeping poorly,
Yeah, I know. Since working with a coach, health coach, they recommend 7 to 9 hours as like the sweet spot for sleep. Do you agree, or do you think it can be a little more, a little less?
I think that's what current research is indicating, that is it. I'm very careful to not say that's what it proves. I even see scientists saying this proves that. I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, it indicates, science is only as good as the time it's in. It changes. So it indicates currently that is what the information says. It may change over time.
Yeah.
I mean, so right now that is it. But there's, sometimes I get people who go, when I work with them, I just don't sleep well. I'm like, I just don't do it. And I'm like, well, have you tried all these strategies? No. So how do you know you don't sleep well? I mean, it's like, you're not even trying. Or they say, well, I don't need that much sleep. I'm function really well on a small amount of sleep. And we know through current research indicates that it's less than 1% of the population that can thrive off of having like 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. So statistically, you're telling me you're like in the top, tier of this. It's probably not you. I mean, it's probably not you. Like, everybody thinks it's them. That's weird. Like,
that was definitely me in college.
Yeah,
now I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I know I rarely get 7 hours of sleep. On the weekends, I definitely am catching up, which is why I sleep so late, but I need this book. But I've been telling Kath a lot of the times, I was like, honestly, I feel like half my problems would be solved if I just actually slept more.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah. There were like people who have, like, I have a daughter, and, when you have a kid, a lot of parents. And then like a lot of children's behavioral issues because of sleep, and the parents don't put their kids to sleep at a reasonable time. They don't get enough sleep, all that. They just act so poorly. I'm like, well, how do they sleep? I always ask them, how do they sleep? Oh, it's not good. They're staying up to 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, you could solve this pretty quickly. I'm like, you just got to have some discipline about this, like, it's crazy to me.
Obviously, not getting sleep is a huge mistake that a lot of people can make when trying to recover or just, optimize their health. Are there any other, common mistakes that you see in people that you work with, either for like working out wise or just lifestyle wise?
I think people underestimate stress as a contributor to their health and wellness. Again, most people in my observation, try to associate their lack of health with, purely nutritional things, which is a huge factor. I'm not saying it's definitely a huge factor, but they underestimate the amount of stress that they're consuming in their life. And so, someone who's chronically stressed, it just plays havoc on your body, increases the amount of inflammation in your body, increasing cortisol, all this stuff. But because like people just they don't see it as a contributing factor, peacefulness, mindfulness, that these things contribute to your overall health and well-being. So I really say like, well, who are the people in your life? How are they contributing to, the positive things in your life, negative things in your life? We need to like really look at that. Is your job a huge stress aspect of your life? Your job could be ruining your health, literally, from the inside out. It's like it's a consideration, right? It's got to be a consideration. I don't know why it's not a consideration. People like, your relationship could be ruining your health. It's a consideration. Like, it's not just your eating and your lack of exercise. It's just, there's so much that goes into being well. Like, so much. Where you live could be ruining your health. Literally. You could be living in an environmentally poor landscape, really poor air quality, lack of nature. All these things are part of your of being well. So I just urge people to consider all the different factors.
Yeah, and I'm laughing because you're hitting on a lot of the things for me that I've been telling Kath about, because I live in New York City, so questionable air quality. I work long hours, and the sleep. It's like I eat right, I work out, but I'm like, this is not enough. There has to be the other factors, and that's where I've been at. And I think that you're right. Like, it really does influence things a lot more than we realize.
It does. Even there's so many great researchers out there in zip code health, and it's like I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Especially, I had a lady on, Sarah Diss. I think she did her dissertation on this, but we had a great conversation about zip code health on my podcast, and it was just really eye-opening of how devastating where you live could be onto your health and wellness. And I am totally understanding that, it's very difficult sometimes to move out of that area. There's a lot of considerations, financial considerations, familial considerations and stuff. But I mean, if you have the ability, I think a person should really consider where they live as part of their health and wellness plan. And is this a good area for that?
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. I will definitely have to check out that episode, because I've been noticing like the air quality here is different. And then you notice like the culture, maybe it's the culture and the people around you. Are you getting along with them as much as, or like maybe you belong in a different area? And then the grass, like you're saying, like nature. There's so many different things that I never really realized before with living. I was like, oh, it's just like where I want to work is what's
exactly.
Like, and like where my friends are, and not like everything else. And I think it's so fascinating.
Right.
So kind of switching to more of the physical side now, when you're doing some of the personal training and exercises, are there certain things that you've noticed, like what are the most common injuries, or I think mistakes they make when they're like maybe first time trying to lift? Or
I think this is funny to say. These things usually happen outside of training sessions mostly. And it's usually just like poor ergonomics and stuff. Like, this is no lie. Like, people like would get injured and be like, oh, I was reaching behind my seat in my car and I hurt my shoulder. Or like, I was picking up a suitcase on vacation and I hurt myself. Like, it's like a lot of stuff like that ends up happening. That I see when people start, like if they're working with a trainer, hopefully they're learning a lot of good technique and efficiency, and you're teaching someone how to move their body efficiently, and creating a foundation for that, and then adding like more external resistance and things of that nature. So I think for a lot of people, injury is often something that happens outside of the training session. I think it just does. I've rarely seen that happen in my 20 plus years with someone that had like a soft tissue injury or a major injury within a training session that I've had. I mean, it would be easy to do if I didn't care. I mean, like, it would be very easy to do. But a good solid trainer does no harm to the client. It looks out for the safety aspect. But often it's just something I would see like in a gym or outside as well. Just someone just not understanding like what they're doing, and then just doing it over and over incessantly without asking for help, which happens all the time. It's like runner. I was a runner in college, but like runners are some of the worst people to work with. It's like all they want to do is run, like all the time. I'm like, okay, this is a very one-dimensional way of looking at life and exercise. Like you're putting a force into the ground. This is basic physics. You're putting a force into the ground. That force comes back into your body. And it's like, how are we helping to buffer this? How are we doing other things? What's the mobility? What's the stability aspect? Are we doing, what type of strength training are we doing? The whole deal, instead of just going out for a run all the time. Like, okay, there's like one thing to do, like one. It's like, but it should be much more encompassing than just doing that, So I think it's important to have a well-rounded program that helps you buffer your injury opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something that when you were talking about, I just came into my mind, sort of related, but as you've been talking about, building relationships with clients and helping them, not get injured and, work on, wherever they are and meeting them there. But I'm wondering like what the benefits you see emotionally from clients as they get stronger, faster, more toned, whatever it may be. Like, what are some of those experiences and benefits that you see?
I think the emotional one is a big one. Just people like feeling better about themselves and having more confidence in their body. And it's a surprising thing for a lot of people. They lack a lot of confidence in their ability to do different movements, or they will get rid of certain things physically in their life. Just like, oh, I can't do that anymore. So they just, they shrink their life to fit their current level of health and wellness. So seeing people emotionally, feel better about themselves, have more confidence, I think is really important. And I really focus on just them becoming a better person through the training session. I think is really important over time. Like, let's make you a better person. I mean, it's great to be better physically, but you actually probably signed up for something you didn't think you were doing. You're going to become a better human, because that is you becoming better. Physically fit is great for you and, for maybe a few other people, but you becoming a better human is better for like every person in your life. Like, you're just a better son, daughter, father, mother, uncle, whatever. Like, that just translates to everybody. You're a better friend. Like, I want you to be better and all of that. The physical part, we'll work on that. That's going to take a long time. But, actually, we may get a lot of really big lifts in you as a person very quickly, and how you see yourself. That actually generally starts happening extremely quickly. Whereas the physical part takes a long time for that to change.
That makes sense. Because when I felt like when I started doing yoga, like when you said like shrinking your life to fit, how you currently are, I was like, oh gosh, like I'm not that flexible.
Yeah.
My arms, I mean, I'm still kind of weak, but like my arm strength when I first started was like non-existent. I was like, I can't hold myself up on one hand or, one leg or whatever. And it took like a lot of like me not doing the moves or really modifying, and then slowly but surely building that confidence that you were talking about and being like, okay, like I'm just going to try it, and having really good instructors to be like, you can do this, or like, here, I will, be right here if you need help or you fall or whatever. And that I feel like I've developed so much more confidence in my own abilities. And that's been like really transformative, not just like, oh yeah, I can, balance on one leg, but like I'm capable of getting stronger and growing and, that kind of stuff.
Definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah. And I think like something they would always say with yoga is it's a practice. Like you're constantly practicing. Like sometimes we focus so much on like the end goal that we fall short of that. And then like, it's okay if you're practicing today is not your best. Today you need to modify a little bit more. Like, I think that's something I also learned. And I think, building that confidence, like on the mat or in the gym, helped to translate outside. in my personal life. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the maybe like toughest things that you've like helped your clients overcome for either becoming a better person or anything like that?
I think just like people, like a lot of people tell these myths about themselves, and it's very common. I'm not good enough. I'm not sure I'm like a capable person in these ways, or they play a lot of comparison. Like, even though it's like I will demonstrate and exercise and they go, look how high you get your leg. Why? I wish I could do that. I'm like, okay, like we don't need to play this game. I'm like, I've been doing this literally most of my life. You just started. Like, this is, your gift is that you're here. You showed up. You began the process. You're trying to get to the finish line and you're at the beginning type of thing. So just overcoming like these ideas that they're not good enough in all phases of their lives. Then maybe they may not feel they're a great parent. They maybe not feel like they're a great spouse or sibling. All these things that, sometimes they have anger about. I mean, we're talking about everything during these. I mean, literally everything. Some people having like these ideas, like they like certain things that they don't think other people would think they would like. And we're like, okay, well, this is an exploration of you. This is so much more than just the exercise. It's like everybody comes in the front door for exercise and says, oh my goodness, I didn't think we were going to be doing essentially therapy, and that we were going to be exploring everything about what makes them them. But that's why I have my doctorate. I wanted that background to be able to effectively have these discussions and be like, this is not a weight loss journey. It's never been about that. And you know that. This is about finding who you are and having someone who can be a good person. And my goal is always to be a good person to other people, to be reliable to other people. A lot of people let other people down. I never want to be that person to other people. Like, I want to show up on time. I want to make sure that I'm invested into you and that I care about you. And like, you're important to me. And I say those things to people. I don't just like think it in my own mind. I tell that to them. And the words are powerful. They're very powerful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I don't think enough people do that. And I love that you channel that into your training, because that definitely makes you different and makes a difference. Because I've noticed, I mean, even me personally in the past, like you're talking about things like anger and all these different emotions. Yeah, working out is an outlet, but it's also a good distraction and avoidant mechanism. And I feel like if it's not fully faced head on, you can just get into that extremist mindset and just working out to avoid every other emotion.
It's like a numbing, almost to numb yourself. But I think also too, like, how many people on a regular basis tell you that they think you're really amazing, like that you're a good person and that you contribute positively to society. And I love how you interact with other people, like telling you this to your face regularly. Like, that doesn't happen for a lot of people. I mean, this thing about most people you meet are not telling you this regularly. They'll tell you other stuff that you're not doing right, but they often aren't telling you how valuable you are in your life and the lives of others. And like, that's, to me, I think my edge. And when I work with people, is I do that every week with my clients. I try to build them up and make them feel valuable. And it's great. It's funny. It's a great way, like, to infiltrate families too, because I'll start with one person in the family and then they get this good feeling. And then all of a sudden the partner joins, and then the children start joining. And then I got the whole family, and now we're doing family good vibes and feelings and lifting people up and stuff. And we're creating a unit. And in some ways, for me, it creates the stickiness. So then it becomes harder. It sounds weird, but it becomes harder to get rid of me, and then all of a sudden I've become very attached to your lifestyle in a sense. I'm just trying to be nice, but I noticed that it's harder that way. Like, if you care about something greatly, you'll do a lot to keep it. If you don't care, you just, throw it away type of thing. But that's also part of being good in the business too, is creating stickiness with people, and not everybody is invested into learning that aspect of it. It's the sets, reps, this exercise, that's amazing. 3 best exercises for your butt or something. It's like, no, that's not going to keep you having business. I mean, it'll just be fun things to say. I mean, it's not going to keep you a long, the average personal training career is 6 months. 6 months. It's a terrible industry to go into. Like, if you're looking for a long term, it's highly unregulated. It's extremely fractured. It has a very snake oil salesman aspect to it. It has a tremendous amount of quackery. I mean, I could keep going. Huge lack of education. And often the people get into it, don't realize that it's actually a very therapeutic based industry. It's not because you like to look good. You'll never look as good as you want to look. No matter how fit you get, you'll never be happy with it, ever.
Giving a whole new meaning to physical therapy over here.
You won't. You'll never be happy. I've trained so many people over the years who look amazing, and maybe they're like objectively beautiful, to a lot of people. They're never happy with it. They're never happy. I'm like, then why are you doing this? Like, it's definitely something else there. But we have to explore what that is and get them to admit why they're doing it, and then, redirect them. It's like, okay, well, what do you want this to actually be about? And talk to them about it.
I'm sure you help so many people too, like reframing those negative associations, especially like if people are working with you or just working out because their mom told them they weren't skinny enough, or a boyfriend broke up with them, and they're associating that breakup with how they look instead of the million other factors that probably played into it. And it kind of makes me start to think, because Melissa and I have noticed that you're also into poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you being so in tune with your clients and helping them express themselves in sessions with you, I'm curious, like, did that lead you to becoming interested in poetry, or how do those two work side by side?
That actually started before I was a trainer. When I was like 20. It was like 24 years ago. I was in college, and I always was into poetry. I thought it was really interesting, very elegant, and I love prose. And I thought, man, this is I would like to do this. So I just started doing it, and not as proficient or as prolific as I was in the past, but I'd like to put up something different on my website here and there of some poetry that I wrote. I just think it's creative. Like, training is art to me. It's in the business, a lot of times we say, well, it's personal training is art and science, but I feel like so much of what we do as practitioners is just science. But I prefer the art aspect of it. I know the science really well. I just prefer the art, because I just think like there's something beautiful about working with someone and helping them understand themselves. And I think through poetry, I understand myself a lot better. And that's, I think, another aspect to my work is like, I spend a lot of time investing into myself, like helping myself become a better person, so that I don't come to my sessions and be like a drag on the other person. I mean, I'm sure many people know people that always come to you with problems all the time. And it's like, wow, this person always has problems all the time. And it's like, it's just tiring. It's like you want to help them, but it's like they just keep spinning the same story over and over again, and they never work on themselves. And so I've, spent a lot of time throughout the course of my career developing a positive coping strategies, therapeutic communication, public speaking skills, having a therapist, making sure that I am sound as a person, so that I can meet the needs and demands of my clients. And poetry is part of that. It just is an outlet of creativity. It's just like playing, like I like playing the guitar, I like watching. Everything I do is, I like these creative outlets help me to feel calm. And so when I work with my clients, I have a good center as well with that. So it's just part of that creative process.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's very important that you work on yourself first so you can serve others better.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have any tips for listeners, how they can maybe start to work on themselves. Maybe they're not ready to do things like personal training or working
Yeah.
out yet, but different ways to start exploring and like start to improve how they are.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is admitting that you need help with that. Is like, you need to do it. I think you have to look inward first and like, well, what are some things I'm struggling with? Is it my communication with people in my life? Is it boundary setting? All those things. So like, just like reflecting on it first, and then, okay, these are things I would like to work on, and then creating an action plan related to that, I think is really important. And creating kind of a stepwise progression that works for you. Because, I think the other thing is, the hard thing about it is, someone could tell you just do A, B, and C, but you actually may not have the ability to do that. You may be very low on the scale of just accomplishing things. So if someone who's like highly motivated already, you tell them do something, they'll just do it. Just do it. But someone who's much lower on that, they need a lot more help than just doing it. So where are you at on that scale? And also understanding that your personality is not permanent. Like, there's not a permanency to the state that you're in. And a lot of people think that I'm always going to be this way. I'm never going to be able to change. I can't do anything. You can do something about it. It's going to be difficult, but you can do something about it. Personality is malleable. Your habits are malleable, but you have to believe that you can do those things. And then just seeking out different experiences, meeting a lot of different people. Therapy, I'm a big proponent of that. I think it's been highly destigmatized now in our society. It's still there a little bit, but I think it's really important. Learning basic counseling skills, I think, are really important. You don't have to be a therapist. I am not a therapist. My doctorate is not in that, but I have a lot of training in that. But with the technology we have, you could easily find these things online. Some basic skills, how to be good at communicating with people, not folding your arms when you're talking to people, looking people in the eye. These are like simple things you could do. Like, I was speaking at a conference, big fitness conference a couple weeks ago, and it was speaking about how to build compassion. Compassion, you can build a compassion. It's a skill. Like, you can build love as a skill. You can build these things for that. And I was like, so I said, one of the things I see walking through the conference is everybody has their head down. Nobody looks at each other. I said, what would happen if you picked your head up and you looked and you smiled at another person? This is part of working on yourself. And like, you would think I told people the secret to the universe saying this. Oh man. Yeah, I do that. I look down, like, and then like watching people look at each other after the talk and talk to each other. Seriously, it was like their mind was blown. It's just like a simple thing to do. Like, and then creating this relationships, inviting people out to do that. Hey, let's give me your phone number. For me, this feels like stuff we just did in the 80s all the time. And 90s, it's like you don't have the internet. Like, we don't, like, you had to talk to people. Like, you had to, or you didn't talk to anyone. Like, that's just how it was, so bringing back those things, I think, are really important. But there's just so many different resources out there to help you improve yourself. And just diverting that, maybe less time spent on things like doom scrolling and all this stuff, and like more time spent on like, hey, what is something that will actually help me and to improve myself and chunk it, do it in small chunks. Don't try to like conquer yourself in like a day. Like, I'm there. I've reached the zenith of my powers. It's like you're going to take your whole life to do that,
It's like my parents said this stuff to me too, because similar to you, they always are talking about, we need to be more compassionate. We need to be more social connection. And I'm very grateful that they've, been talking to me about that stuff my whole life. And they've definitely been those parents when you're talking about like, oh, you can, limit what your kids do and whatnot. Like they would be like, put your phone away, or we're taking it. Especially when I was with other family members or family friends, they're like, none of your friends need to, hear from you right now. Like you're here with people. But just hearing you like say these basic things, like I was just like, I can't believe that like we need to be told.
Of course we do. Like all the time. And this is like I always look at people when I walk around and I smile at them. But we think sometimes when you're looking at someone and they have like this kind of down face that they're unhappy. That just may be just how they look. It doesn't mean that they're unhappy. But we all interpret like everybody's afraid to like talk to each other. It's like, well, they probably don't want me to. Oh, wait, should I say something? It's like, and then as soon as you're nice to someone, they're usually pretty nice back to you, like that. There's just a lot of good people, but everybody's playing this weird dance with each other. Like, well, I don't want to be the one to say something. Like, what if it goes bad? Like, well, not both sides can't be doing that. Someone has to initiate that. So I think it's a great way to just start something, which is just have good eye contact with people, have an open posture, don't be closed off, don't stare down at the ground, and just say hello. And people often just smile back and say hello. That's okay. If that's all it comes to, it's fine. It's like, but I think people actually remember that. They're like, oh, somebody was like, looked at me and said something. Everybody wants to be like validated and noticed, but everybody's like scared to talk to each other. It's actually strange for me because I didn't grow up like that. Like I grew up in a different time. Like I remember when the internet was like came to be. I was like, what's this? Like, what is email? I remember the first time I opened an email, I was in college. And somebody's like, dude, you have an email account. I'm like, what's that? It was like literally what? And there was like messages. I was like, this is like a letter someone wrote, but electronically. That's literally what I said when I was like 18. And I was like, now it sounds idiot, like an idiot if I say that, but like we didn't have, I told my daughter the other day, we had these walkie talkies. Okay, people, these are things you like radio. And we were moving like in 2003 from Kansas to Las Vegas. My brother came and helped us, and he drove one car and we drove a different car. But there were no cell phones. Like there wasn't an iPhone back in 2003 and all this stuff. We had like walkie talkies because we were like, well, how are we going to communicate with them? Like, oh, we're going to get walkie talkies and stuff like that. It wasn't like we were texting people. So like, in some ways I was glad that happened because it was like, I know what it's like not to have this communication, and it still serves me really well. It's no problem to just talk to people. I'm like, well, that's what I had to do growing up, And today's generation, I think if you're a digital native, it probably feels a little awkward because your entry is like texting or messaging someone. Like that happened after you met someone. Like, like later on down the road, you just talk to people initially. So that I thought was a good thing to have,
Absolutely. So you've already given our listeners just so many pieces of advice and tips, which we love. I feel like they're going to take so much away from this episode. But what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's starting their health journey today?
Just be easy on yourself about it. Don't spend so much time doubting whether you can or cannot do it. Just recognize it's okay that you don't want to do it. Like I said that before, it's like literally fine that you don't want to do it, but don't be stuck there. And then recognize in yourself if you need help. Like I've been doing this a long time. Very few people are just good on their own. This isn't me like trying to pump up my business. It's just like a lot of people struggle with the motivation of just doing the basics of being in health and wellness. If you need help, you should ask for help. And obviously there's a cost factor, but hey, we live in 2022. There's a cost factor for everything. It's like, yeah. I mean, everything costs something, I mean, what's the priority for it? Maybe you have to shift some priorities financially if you want formalized help. If you feel like you don't need or don't want the formalized help, then there's lots of resources out there. Just make sure it's reputable, that it's not disinformation or quackery. Spend the time actually looking at various resources. Don't get caught in a rabbit hole of one thing, because that's easy through algorithms and stuff to just get caught in one thing. Look at varied points of view around health and wellness, and then make a determination from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. So what do you think the future of health looks like?
Highly personalized. I think there's a good show on Netflix. I'm going to give you more shows here. It's called The Future of, and it goes into like future of fashion, future of health and wellness, future of sports, all the stuff. So it looks at basically like there's an episode on health, and I was like, oh yeah, I identify with this and what we're seeing. But I think the future of health is highly personalized, based off of your genetic makeup, your environmental surroundings, things of that nature. I think we've started this process already with wearables, and people knowing their like vital signs or their stats about their heart rate, understanding O2 saturation, breathing rate, the whole thing. We're gathering all this data right now. I think the future of health is like, okay, the data telling you this is what you need to do to be on the right track. I told this to I had a lady on, Estelle Gerard, who is in predictive health technology. Her episode just came out last week, and basically I said, well, people often don't change their health and wellness ideas a lot of times. They're very static a lot of times. But you think about if you're 20, what if I had a technology that was pretty accurately telling you what you would look like, feel like, be like at 40? Would you change if someone could show that to you regularly? I think that's the future we're heading towards. It's like, because often like I'll meet somebody and they'll show me a picture of them and they're like 22, and then I see them now, like it's unrecognizable, the person, right? They have a lot of poor lifestyle choices. And we know that lifestyle accounts for generally like 80% of your outcomes for that. You control that. So what if I told you this was your future if you went this way? This was your future if you went that way. This was your future went this way. And it was really accurate. Like, would you be more likely to change your habits? I think that's where we're headed on that aspect, genomics and on all, like understanding ourselves a lot better, I think, and doing something about it. You may be like getting dressed and you look in the mirror, and this mirror has all these statistics and signs like, hey, you're going out tonight. If you do this and that, this will contribute to this, blah, blah, blah type of thing. Could be like, you might be like, worth it. So I'm like, okay, like that would be me. I'd be like, okay, yeah, it's worth it. I don't care. It's like, you have this many drinks tonight, you may have indigestion or this and that. I'd be like, will I have a great story? Like, probably worth it. I'm like,
sometimes the story is everything, right?
The story is definitely everything for me. I'm like, it'll be a little painful, but will the story be like legendary? Okay, I'll probably do it. I'm like,
all about balance.
You're right. I think that's kind of where it's going. Where it's gonna go. Yeah.
I love it. That totally reminds me of just these conversations I've been having, because in grad school, we've been talking a lot about osteoporosis and how preventing that happens in your teens, 20s, and 30s, like early 30s. And then you've built up all your bone density, your bone mass, and that's it. And that's what you have for the rest of your life. And it's like, what would women do if they knew this in their 20s, especially when it's legal for you to be doing a lot of detriment to your body?
It's hitting it hard.
So I love that. That's such a good idea, a really good idea. And hope that
it's on the way. I think it's all happening underneath of us right now. All this stuff is being developed. And I mean, you're going to get into like epigenetics, and you get people changing themselves to fit the different environments they're in, and all types of weird, freaky stuff is coming. Yeah. Yeah.
Our last question, though, is since this is Connecting the Dots, please tell our listeners how they can connect with you and where they can follow you.
Yeah, it's pretty simple for me. I actually love getting emails from people. Darian Parker at gmail.com. I like being prompt and getting back to people. So it's not like you're gonna message me and you won't hear from me. Like, you will hear from me that same day. I enjoy being very on time with people. And then my LinkedIn is pretty much the only kind of like that type of media that I have, professional media that I have. So I have LinkedIn. And then like, if you want to like hear more of me talking about these things or interviewing people, my podcast, Dr. D's Social Network Podcast, all major platforms. Also on my website, drdarianparker.com, where my poetry is and my thoughts about training and the whole deal is on there too. And I just like learning about different people. So you will get like a crazy variety of different people that I talk to. Like, is insane. So
we love it. And if someone wanted to start working with you, how could they go about that?
Just through the email. Just email me. Yeah, if you list it for them, they can contact me, and again, I'll get right back to them about it. If they're on LinkedIn, they could just reach out, message me for that. Pretty simple. But yeah, I love talking to people about their health and wellness journey, and I may or may not be the right person for them. But one thing is you will definitely learn more than exercise. I mean, you're going to do a hard journey about yourself. That's definitely going to happen.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today. This was a great conversation. And
Thanks for having me.
I think a lot of people need to hear some of this stuff. I know I did too. So.
Oh, good, Melissa. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, for both of you, reach out anytime. Happy to answer any questions you ever have about anything related to this. And I appreciate your platform. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that resonated with you, or you simply enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, leave a 5-star rating and written review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can be the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you'd like to further support us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast on both platforms. We're also on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast.
We have intentionally curated resource guides that go with every episode to give you the tools, resources, and information you need to make tangible changes at home. You can purchase these guides at kathlyncarney.com/resources. If you would like to work with me directly, you can also go to kathlyncarney.com/services and book a free discovery call to decide which service is right for you. Make sure you follow me at Kathlyn Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok.
And I'm Melissa Chamis on Instagram and The Lazy Yogi separated by underscores on TikTok. And we'll link all this information in the show notes to make it easier for you.
We appreciate your continued support and look forward to hanging with you next week.